So my first thoughts when I first saw colourless inkless pens were, what the heck? Well, I've changed my mind. It is actual magic. So I'm going to show you a few demo ideas that I use colourless pens for. And it really is so useful for texture, for errors, for helping you blend and blur, to do different techniques. And I'm just demoing quickly on this teddy face. I've been working on teddies, what it ends up looking. I will give you a quick show. Working on these, which will be in my next book. And these, the texture, can you see, is created and helped along by Colorless Blender, which is the technique I'm showing you here. I'm not going to do it all. So we'll get back to that. And here, also in my book, is raindrops, and I have shown a little bit of this, but you're literally dragging down. Now the longer you keep it pressed on, i.e. the more fluid that's coming out, then the whiter it will be. You can even do icicles. Yeah, we're coming up to winter season, aren't we? So that needs to dry, needs to bleach out and dry a bit. But again, I will get back to that. If I can take this away. It's great for spillages. So if you were colouring something, whoopsie, I've gone over the line. Well, it can help with that if you just dab a bit. It's going to bleach that colour out, push it through the page and help you to minimise the error that you've done. However, I'm not against errors. Sometimes making a mistake, that will go better as it dries, but sometimes making a mistake, which I found, has led to brilliant things. And here we have a mix of different fun, almost pastel shades, and these have dried, and here I am scribbling away to blend them. Now, unless you want a really patchy looking finish, you do want to put your Colorist blender over it all and be generous. I have quite a few of these pens, in case you run out, like I do have quite a few of white paint pens and things, just in case you run out. But the ink and everything, as I would say, changes as it dries. And this is actually the start of one of the first tutorials in my book, which is how to create these lovely bath bubbles, iridescent. And that's what I do. I place down the colours and I blend. So that's just a demo I'm showing you there, and obviously that changes as it dries. So moving on, we then have another in my book, which is how to do tie-dye. And what I use with the Colorless blender with this is, let me just find I've got a pen here, is, oh, wrong pen, I'm sorry, is to place a good amount of the Colorless underneath to wet the area that you're working on, just the area you're working on, because otherwise it'll dry, and then to create the start of the blurry tie-dye effect, I've then placed the ink over the top. Now what this does is helps it to blur out more. My idea of tie-dye is it's a bit blurred, it's a bit out of focus. If I didn't use that to start, we'd be looking at something like this, okay, which is more, you know, straight edges. And then when that has dried, what you can do, and it says in my book, is to give some more definition. When it dries, you can go over, do another layer a bit inside to keep the furry blurry edges. And that really is a good tip for doing tie-dye. And then going back to this bear, you can see it's dried off a bit. So, you know, you can do another layer and let that dry. I do little dots around the edges to help with the perspective. Obviously there's a demo, I've only done one side, but what it's also useful with, which you can see I've done with the sort of nose, the snout area, is place some colorless here, and then I've got another very, very pale colour. It's a pale lemon, very light indeed. And I'm going in with a yellow, and I'm going in with a bit of a pinky orange tone. And that's all going to blur and blend, helped by the colourless and this very, very light, almost colourless. I can't say the word, but it's magic, and that will dry. And like I said, you will end up with a nose that's really delicate and soft, like this. So let me just move that aside for a second. And back to this, which, because it's a dark background, would need going over again. Like I said, if you stay longer and harder, applying literally more ink, it's the carrier fluid with no colour, no pigment in it. But yeah, it works wonders. And this, you know, I could turn into, make it look a bit like raindrops, bit of shade here, bit of I've got any white, bit of white. Excuse me, my voice was going then. Bit of white. This hasn't dried, so, but you get the idea. Turn that into raindrop on the window. Smudge some bits a bit. I use Q-tips or my finger if you want to get a bit of a smudgy look. But yeah, you could turn the letters into rain on glass. And so it's got so many uses, really does. What will you do with yours?